Hey everyone, Bradley Jack Design here with another design breakdown, this time my Pau Gasol graphic from my 365-day project. You guys voted on this and wanted me to do it, so here it is. It's a lot of lighting effects with the eyes and around here on the jersey trim. There's a lot of layers going on within these folders, so I'll see if I can break it down for you and show you how I was able to make this. First off, we need a photo. So here's a nice high-quality photo I found of Pau Gasol. I went ahead and edited it in Lightroom and Photoshop. If you want to learn how to edit like this, go ahead and check out my other video. It's the same exact techniques I used in that video to get this quality and this definition with in this image. So for the background, I have this image of Pau Gasol. I threw a little vignette on it just to add a little bit of grunge to it. You can see in the background layer here, I found a photo of Staples Center. I went ahead and actually masked around it pretty loosely, around Pau's head. So you can see here I painted around his head so it was just on the outside. I went ahead and added a gradient map to it, which is, I believe, black to purple. So this is black to the Lakers purple, just to add a little bit of purple texture to the background of the whole design. So first thing what we're going to start off with are the eyes. So this is the final product of the eyes and a little bit of lighting down here. So to start off, let's check out the eye glows themselves. So in here I have this giant folder, left eye, right eye. So let's start with the left eye. So as you can see, what I did essentially was I painted on the Lakers yellow with sort of a softer brush. And then I added a layer on top of it that's screened, that's a little more blurred. I duplicated that layer, blurred it a little bit more. Then I made another layer that's set to overlay and blurred that. And then I put another screened layer on top to blur again. And then I have two very, very heavily blurred layers that are set to overlay and color dodge. Now the reason I did this was trial and error. So I checked to see what I thought was good for what it looked like. It's really trial and error, just testing to see what would work. The right eye is the exact same as the left eye. I used the same layers. I just painted differently. So you just paint it with a standard brush and then blur it and set it to screen, color dodge, or overlay. Really just play around and see what looks good. These two layers down here at the bottom are a hue layer and an overlay layer. Basically, I think I added these in at the end to add a general hue of yellow over the eyes and over the jersey, and then an overlay of the same yellow just to have it sort of glowing so the light is actually hitting on Pau Gasol. So above this, what we have is we have a levels layer set to screen. This essentially will brighten up any layer you paint over. So you can see I just painted over the eyes here to brighten it up. I also added a yellow layer on top of it set to color just to colorize that lighting effect. So you can see it barely makes everything a little bit more yellow. So this is eye glow blur. Let me see what's in here. So you see if I turn this on and turn this off, it's adding more color around the eyes. So these are, it's just one screen layer just like this below with the same color, and then another level set to multiply on top of it to darken it up. So this was a little too bright, so I went ahead with a lighter transparent brush, painted back in to add a little bit more detail so it wasn't so washed out. For the eye smoke, I just have a couple stock images. So here's a stock image of some smoke. You can barely see it on here. I've adjusted the levels on it to get rid of this outline here so it's just the smoke in the middle, and I've colorized it to be yellow. I did the same thing with this image here. This is more defined smoke. Set it to levels to get rid of the edges so it's just the inside of the smoke we wanted, and then I have that set to a color of yellow as well to make it yellow smoke. The left eye and right eye are the exact same. I pretty much just swapped and flipped around the images, so that's how the eye smoke was made. The jersey, there's a lot going on. So you can see how I added this sort of glowing effect onto the jersey. And it's the same thing I did up here with the eyes. So if we look at this left trim layer down here, you can see if I get rid of all these layers, it's a screened layer that's a little blurry that I just painted in along the edges of this trim. And I took that layer, duplicated it, and blurred it, and then took that layer and duplicated and blurred it, and it's set to screen as well. You can see we have the same overlay layer. I've got two of those on here. I have actually an additional one And you can see it just sort of adds a little bit more of a glow each time you do this. And each time you progress, you blur it a little bit more just to add a little bit more feathering. And then I've got the color dodge on top, which adds more sort of a glow effect to it. I then have our levels layer set to screen like we did before with a color overlay masked to it. So it turns the layer yellow. Just make sure it doesn't contaminate any weird colors. A lot of the times you'll get this orange effect. To combat that, you can sort of add the color yellow to it. So I did that literally for all of these. So I went in, painted around the trim here, and this one actually looks like I painted on this levels layer. I painted up here a little bit more to add a little more brightness, just on this levels layer. But these layers are all the same technique. It's just you paint in where you want, duplicate the layer, blur it, set it to either screen, overlay, or color dodge. Most of them are going to be screens, which is only going to show the lightness. It's going to get rid of any dark colors. The overlays are in there as well, and then the color dodge on top sort of adds this cool effect to it that I like. So that's literally, the layers are all the same for these. It's just where you paint to add in that glow. So further on, to add a little more detail to it, I have all these sparkle overlays. So pretty much these are just some overlays I have downloaded that I set to screen. So it's getting rid of anything that's black in there and showing only the light colors. Everything else is transparent, essentially. So I have a bunch of these set to screen. These are all set to screen. And I basically just overlaid them on spots where I thought there should be a little bit of sparkle. So you can see this final one is a little bit more like sparks coming off of a fire. So I have all of these set to screen. You could probably also set some of these, add adjustment layers of layers to get rid of this. You can see this line right here. But with other effects I put on here, you can't really tell that it's there. So then we have the defined smoke at the bottom. So just like the sparkles, these are all set to screen. If we click on each of these, they're set to screen, which gets rid of any black on that image and only shows the lighter colors. So in this case, white. So if I turn all of these on, you can see we just added a bunch of these little smoke images on top of where the glow is. And then I put a layer of color on top of all of these images. So you can see that they are all, let me turn that on. Actually, I did set a levels layer on this one to get rid of this line that was here. So you can see I added a bunch of smoke on top of this. Oops. So then we have this other layer, subtle smoke at the top and subtle smoke at the bottom. So using the same technique, it's these layers set to screen with a levels layer on top to make sure there's no harsh lines. So you can see this line here and it kind of bleeds into here. We don't want that. You can just set a levels layer and move the left cursor over just a little bit, and it makes sure that anything that's gray is actually black. So then when it's selected onto something that's screened or masked to something that's green, it'll get rid of anything that's dark gray. It makes it actually black instead of gray. And then there's a yellow layer on top of it, set to color, masked or clipped to this layer as well. So it adds a little bit of subtle smoke at the top. I then have his signature on here, which, as you guessed it, is the same technique. So I have his signature set on here, set to normal, and then I put a glow over it. So I've got a couple screened layers. So we got screen, screen, screen. These are all set to different opacities too, just to make sure the effect isn't too much. It's good if you think something might be a little too bright, set the opacity down, and then it just allows you to build up a little bit slower the glow effect. So I have this same image here of smoke that I used up here on top of the signature. Another levels layer where the left cursor is set over. You can see if I drag this over here, and actually you can't really tell what it does. I didn't want this effect to be as bad as, oh, it's turned off. Well, that's why it's not showing up. So if I drag this over here, this is what it looked like. We drag over a little bit, this is what it looks like in the end, and then a little color layer. I just wanted a little hint of smoke on this instead of the full thing. And then in the end, we've got our top layers, which, if you've seen one of my videos before, are essentially levels and color lookups, maybe a gradient overlay. So I have a levels layer in here set to just brighten this up a little bit. It's set to screen, and I have the yellow on top of that as well. This is actually set to normal, which is fine. It adds a little more of a glow to it. So the first color lookup I added was drop blues. This one's nice if you want. It basically gets rid of or desaturates a lot of the blue. So you can see it really desaturates the background where the purple is. The second one I have is the 2395 by Kodak, which I use often. It's set to only 50%. If I set it to 100%, it can look kind of funky. So I set it to 50%, and it doesn't have the extreme effect that it could. Then I have Foggy Night on here, and again, just go into these color lookups and play around. So you can see this one drastically changes it, adds a little bit of a mystic effect to it, which I was trying to go for with this one. That's also set to 50. A lot of these color lookups set to 100 sort of destroy the design. That's why if you set them to a lower opacity, it really helps your design overall. And then we have a fourth color lookup here, which let's see what this one is. Edgy Amber. So if I uncheck this and check this, so you can see it adds a little bit more of a deeper tone to the image. It adds a little more amber than just the yellow that we were using. And then a levels layer I have here with the slider slid over just a little bit just to darken up the whole image itself. So that's what it is. This is the final design. So it's a lot of layers using the same technique, painting in yellow and then duplicating that layer several times with different Gaussian blurs, set to screen, set to overlay, set to color burn or color dodge, and then that just applied to a signature, applied to a trim, applied to the eyes, applied to some smoke effects on here, and then the color lookups at the end. I mean, if I uncheck this and check this, you can see how drastically these layers make this design look. Now you might think this design's fine. I just like adding a little bit more detail with some of these color lookups in the top layer. And if you want to see the importance of editing your images before you pull them into a design, this is what it would look like if I didn't edit that Pau Gasol image at all. And then this is what the final design looks like. So you can see it's a lot more detail. You get a lot more detail in his facial hair here and his hair in general. And it just doesn't have the same effect if you have this plain image here of Pau. So I hope you learned a lot in this design breakdown. If you want more design breakdowns, let me know what you want to do in the comments below. Just look at my website or look at my Instagram and ask for a specific design breakdown. I've got a whole list you guys can look at. Make sure to like and subscribe, and if you have any suggestions for tutorials or anything else, let me know. Thanks.